Welcome back to the Training Babble podcast. I'm your host, Dave Schell, and today I am joined by John Karrasch, a bike fitter and coach based out of Birmingham, Alabama. John, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave.
So you are a bike fitter and a coach, but today I am talking to you because you also found yourself as a de facto tire rolling resistance tester. So tell me first how you got into coaching and bike fitting, and then I want to hear how you got into the tire testing business.
Yeah, so we'll start kind of further back with probably the bike fitting first. So I've been doing that since 2013, I believe. Yeah. So I'd been out of school as a physical therapist assistant for a few years already and was riding a bunch then and racing a lot. And our kind of day-to-day practice and outpatient PT clinic, you're doing similar sort of things where you're helping people move better and analyzing and going through all that. So we had a little bit of training at the shop I work at a long time ago, probably 20 years ago. We had some fit training from Michael Sylvester there, and it was fine, but sometimes things just don't really stick with you and you breeze past them, especially when you're 20 or whatever.
Yeah.
So it crossed my mind again. I was reading a lot about fitting bikes here and there, and it was interesting. And I started doing it basically because I didn't think anyone was doing it as good as it could be done around here and more broadly, maybe the Southeast. Everyone's got their skill set, but as far as somebody with some physical therapy background, I thought there was I don't know, it's very applicable to it. I'll say that.
Absolutely.
So started with it and did it part-time for probably 7 years or so. And during COVID, not exactly because of COVID or anything, but during COVID, I realized like if I'm only doing this one day a week, I'm never going to do any more with it. So just kind of a little bit spur of the moment, quit the PT clinic totally. And I've been fitting bikes full time for 4.5 years now at Cobb Cycles here in Birmingham. Let's see, as far as the coaching, that started around the same time as I switched to full-time fitting. So my buddy Jason Shearer over in Mississippi, he runs Ordinary Epics coaching, and we'd always, you just talk shop about that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
If you're into it. And I was always super into it. And we discussed joining up before to do that, and that just seemed like a good time. And we have probably a lot of similar outlooks on how we coach people, and both very interested in the process of it and our own experiences racing and whatnot. So I enjoyed that. We mostly do off-road type coaching, but
Yeah.
I've got a guy who just finished Ironman Chattanooga, and I've got a guy who is only a runner right now. But it's all interesting. It's fun learning the ins and outs of helping people with that. And to get to the tire testing, that started up maybe 3 years ago, and it initially was only aerodynamic testing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So when I started it was around the same time that you started. You've all seen wind tunnel stuff around for triathlon and TT and road, super popular, especially the first two I mentioned there. But you didn't see much of it for gravel or mountain bikes or anything, even though it's maybe less important. It's obviously somewhat important. And this was around the time when Silka was starting to put out some videos with all that in there. And I thought,
yeah,
that is interesting. I would, just for sheer curiosity, let me give it a shot and see what I get. So started working on a little bit of it there, and the results seemed reasonable that I was getting, and I kind of ran out of steam with it for a while. There's just nothing else to, I realized I had a good fast setup of my own, so I didn't have much curiosity beyond that. I left things alone. But then I got back into the same sort of protocol, but for tires about a year ago. Again, just out of sheer curiosity. This time it was because I ended up between gravel bikes during the best time of the year, which is right now. So I was initially bummed about it, but then I realized, whatever. I've got my I've got my carbon hardtail I can ride, and I've got a rigid fork to put on it, and just set it up with some Aspen 2.4s and did everything on it for a while, and it was just not as it wasn't as slow as I thought it would be, even on the road and places like that. So that really started to get in my head with like how much slower is this, or even faster in certain places, and why?
Right.
The bike is less aerodynamic, obviously, as a mountain bike, but nobody's really talking about how much less. Same with the tire.
Yeah.
Nobody was, you'd hear, oh, we tested this and this one's faster. And I thought, that's fine. But I'd like to know exactly how much faster. And is this, how big is this spread between tires getting as it gets rougher? Because I
Yeah.
didn't even know that at first. I was like, there, there's no telling. There's really no telling. So just got going with it. Took a little bit of figuring out, but I got over the hump with it fairly quickly, enough to realize that it did work, and pretty much just keep going with it, because there's always different sort of layers of things you find with it.
Yeah. And so I guess this is a good place to kind of point out one of my issues with the testing that we do see, the results that we do see. It's typically put out by manufacturers, and they're always going to highlight where they excel compared to their competitors. And so they're going to say, oh, we're faster at this yaw angle at 40K, 40 kilometers per hour, and this is how much time you'd save and stuff. And it's like the things that would drive me nuts. It's like, yeah, so that's if you stay in that position at that yaw angle, which is the direction of the wind, and like all these things. And so your head just starts going through all these like confounding variables. It's like, yeah, but what's actually faster in the real world? And that's how I kind of came across you, is somebody has sent me a podcast where you were actually doing real world testing, which nobody does. Everybody's doing like bicycle rolling resistance or bicycle rolling resistance is typically where we're getting it. And then like using stuff like based off of wind tunnel and stuff like that. And so it's super interesting that you've tested these things in actual race conditions.
Yeah, that was pretty important to me too, because I'd seen plenty of whatever kind of indoor tests are out there, but one thing I didn't even know how much other testing manufacturers were doing. A year ago, for all I knew, everybody was doing what I was doing. I didn't know.
Right.
So the potential was there for me to be doing what they were all doing, and it all be wrong, which ended up not being the case. Like it's relatively uncommon, but it hits a common sentiment with people that ride and race off road, which is tires are important. Everybody's curious about how fast or slow they are.
Yeah.
But we all know how hard it is to look back at your Strava stuff and be able to really discern anything from it, or even on the same day with a stopwatch to discern anything important from it. You can get numbers from it, but they might not mean as much as they seem initially.
Yeah.
So then you hit on the point earlier about the yaw angles and stuff. That was one thing that was a goal when I started out, was to get past some of this. Some of like the white paper stuff you see on bikes and products when they come out, which is like, yeah, that sounds great. And that's really nice that all this was set up in the laboratory for it. But a lot of it is hard to understand, even for people with a math background and a background in coaching. It's still hard to understand because a lot of times there's not enough numbers or explanation in there, for the aerodynamic stuff, which is probably tied in a little bit more tightly than either one of us had planned so far, but it's just part of it. With that, you'd see like, grams of drag from this product better than this one. The next thing you'll see, this many seconds saved at this many kilometers an hour, and then this much CDA on another white paper or whatever. And it gets so confusing, especially for just like people that just like to go ride, to be able to say, what's better and to what degree.
Yeah.
And the degree is important, because if it's all this stuff where you're saving half a watt, over a 10-hour day, you might not need to spend $1,000 on that.
Well, yeah. That's like a good point too, right? Is where it comes, like, if we come into talking about weight savings, everybody wants a lighter bike. Everybody wants to like spend money on lighter components and stuff. And you get into the like gram or dollars per gram. kind of math, right? And so same thing here where we're talking about dollar per CDA or dollar per CRR. And one thing I always tell my athletes is like, because it's like there's so much information out there, articles come out, videos come out, everybody's a YouTube content creator now. And it's like the fastest tire is the one that keeps you on your bike. So you don't get a flat, you don't crash, like things like that. And so like getting so caught up in like, oh, this one's going to save me time. That's why the real world testing really matters. And that is like, who cares how air quote fast it is if you're on the side of the road fixing punctures,
Yeah, exactly. You got to be, even with, it'll sound like I'm speaking out both sides of my mouth saying this, but rolling resistance is not everything,
Yeah.
Even off-road, rolling resistance is not everything. The tire's got to hold air. It's got to work for your terrain. It's got to at least last somewhat. You don't want to be changing stuff constantly. All those things are factors within it, and I think it's easy for people that ride or race to drive themselves crazy, always trying to find something else to try.
Yeah.
Because that gives that what that does is it just limits you from learning what you have already.
Well, that's such a huge point, right? I tell my athletes, like, if they're going to put on new tires, because I do know athletes that want to change tires for every condition. And it's we're always trying to choose the best tire for all the conditions. So across the majority of conditions. But on top of that, you want to know how it handles. I'd rather have a slower rolling tire, but know how it's going to handle in every condition than a faster rolling tire and not know how it's going to handle in like kitty litter or wet rocks or, sand or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I've got some tires on my mountain bike right now that I'm going to change to something that if somebody added up all my categories, they would say, oh, hold on, you're switching to something slower on like Cat 1 and Cat 2 gravel, but it's got a little bit better volume to it. And I think it's a little bit better on some of the rocks and routes we have here for our trails.
Which is huge.
Yeah. You want to be able to, and we're also talking about splitting hairs even with these two tires. It's they're already good. They're already really good. But you do develop preferences over time, and you gotta reconcile your day-to-day riding experience along with the results of tires, I think, or the weights of them.
So let's talk about how does your I kind of came across you. Like I said, somebody sent me the podcast you were on. I've been using a program. I'm kind of a unofficial ambassador for Best Bike Split. And I've been using that for a long time. And that's like rolling resistance, CDA, those are all things we try to configure in that. And so what I've used historically when we're trying to find information for tires is bicyclerollingresistance.com. And so you can go in, you can find your tire and it has the CRR and you kind of plug it in, but it doesn't seem to add up. And as far as I know, they're doing like a steel drum rolling resistance test, which is just like a smooth drum that they roll tires on and try at different pressures and stuff like that. So how does your testing differ from something like bicycle rolling resistance?
It's the same in the you're generally trying to capture a coefficient of rolling resistance value. And that sounds kind of murky, but it's important because that's what lets you translate it into the watts that it takes for a given load and a given speed. Okay. So I've got both things within all my results. The CRR sounds boring and they're tiny numbers, but it's really important. And then the wattage at whatever mile an hour, I think, makes it, relatable for people. So as far as what I'm doing, I've got a lot of different courses, but they all involve riding some set loops, usually out and backs with a little bit of a hill on each side, because part of it is there's no way to model braking forces within any of the software that works with the Chung method or virtual elevation as it's called sometimes. But you're going out and you're riding loops. You try to stay in the same position on the bike, be consistent with things that might impact that. Like you don't want to go leave your jersey flapping half open one day and then close the next day, for an extreme example. But I've got some paved surfaces I use. I've got three different gravel. I got a little bit more than three. I've got some different gravel tracks that work in a progressive way to build up. So they'll give progressively higher sets of rolling resistance values for all these tires. And that was not the plan starting out at all. The plan was to do it on what I considered neutral ground for tires around here, which is there's a public park, but no cars, traffic, or anything travels on it with, big tires and a lot of weight, which would mess up normal gravel roads. So it's pretty undisturbed gravel, and it's very, I call it normal. Everything seems kind of okay when you go ride it, which really adds to the factor of not knowing what's better or worse on it. So you can ride on 35 slicks out there or 2.4 mountain bike tires. Both of them feel okay. So it gives a big span of potential problem solving there. But yeah, you just ride in the loops. That's the protocol. Each test would take maybe 10 minutes to do, so they're not super long.
Oh,
There is,
interesting.
yeah, that really would probably surprise a lot of people.
Yeah.
Uh, so for one tire for one track, the test period itself would take 10 minutes, and that sounds like not very long at all. But there's disadvantages to really long tests, being that the more you do it, the more the weather, like the air density or temperature could change, which messes things up. Or it's just unnecessary, really. It's because you're within the loops, you're able to see your results for each loop. So you're able to kind of within the one test verify that it's repeatable. Because that's always a good question if you see a test is, well, what happens next time you do it? Because if it
Absolutely.
varies by half of your whole results, that's not a good test. Uh,
Right.
but if it's identical over, three or four repeats of it within the same 10 minutes, okay, I got something going pretty good right here, at least in that way, you know. So you'll be able to see if you messed up your line choice, or uh, or if you got a bunch of wind or something weird on one lap, you'd see it, stuff like that.
So, so that's interesting, right? Like when you were talking earlier about just off-road conditions and stuff like that. Like that's a huge thing, right? Like the sand conditions. Like if it rains, the
Yeah.
dirt like gets
Oh my
soft and
gosh.
it feels like you're puddling or pedaling through oatmeal. Or if it's really dry, then it can be faster and things. And these are all things that can impact it for sure. And so it's
They
interesting that you
do.
say you have to choose line choice. So you're having to. Are you doing multiple loops when you do this track?
Yeah, you need to. You need to. That's part of it. You need to be able to kind of replicate the results of the testing would show a two curves, one that's your real elevation change over the ride and one that's your virtual one, and those should match up very, very closely. So you want to be
Yeah.
able to layer those and match them successively. Because if you only have one, it's very hard to do. It is possible actually with some newer kind of elevation type software I'm using for it. So it is possible, but you got to have the prerequisites first, and that would be yeah, ride the same line on your course you're using and do multiple laps of it. Those are like the big things that are important. And I think people are better at riding a known line than they might realize, because we all do it in races. We all
Well,
know if we're
yeah.
on a climb, okay, I moved over to like where this grass meets like the hard packed dirt, and I'm my legs hurt less. So a lot of us are pretty good at that already. Uh,
Yeah.
it is hard. It is somewhat hard to find courses that have the same kind of degree of roughness over the out and back portion.
What do you
Okay,
mean by that?
so you wouldn't you want a course that's similar in its terrain
Yeah.
throughout the entirety of the course. You don't want one that's got like a big mud section in the middle, then hard packed dirt, and then a bunch of rocks another third of the way down.
Right.
That makes things really difficult, and you're not gonna. I've actually got a paved road in front of my house like that that's got three different types of asphalt on it, and theoretically you could do testing on it, but it does not look good at all. So I
Right.
kind of avoided that now.
And so in this process of testing, you said you started kind of with the aerodynamic testing. And
Mhm.
part of that is you're trying to isolate variables, right? And so it's like when you're doing the aerodynamic, you have to account for rolling resistance. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
typically with aerodynamic values, you would be assuming the rolling resistance You're assuming from the start on that stuff. But
Okay.
you would take like the bicycle rolling resistance value for that tire and kind of hope that your road is the same. And in that case, it really doesn't matter because if you're comparing two helmets and you use the same rolling value, it's fine. You still see
That's
this one's
yeah.
10 watts faster at race speed. But with tires, the aerodynamic testing is almost has you have to be okay at that before you do the other parts of the fun tire stuff. So you got to kind of accept if someone's going to do this stuff, they got to enjoy doing it and kind of learn all the different parts of it because it is harder, I would say, to test tires than it is just to test like probably aerodynamic stuff. So
Well, I would say, like you said, the test takes about 10 minutes. I'm guessing it takes a lot longer to change tires than it does to set them up for
well,
the test than it does to do the actual test.
it depends on how good you are at changing tires, probably. Here's one thing I want to say. There's multiple ways to do this. One would be have a full day of it where you're changing out 6 tires in a day and you run them all and uh, you get your results. But there's some definite downsides to that. The more times you're changing equipment, the more times you have a chance of something rubbing, like a disc brake or something like that rubbing. You gotta do. You need a speed sensor for this stuff, and you need a good calibration of it for the head unit. So it's a lot more measuring, setting pressures. Uh, there's all the potential hassles of just inflating a tubeless tire, also. So I err on the side more of test pretty often and do short tests. And that's got the potential downside of doing more days of it or whatever. But that's fine for me. All the stuff's pretty close to where I live, and I can do it while I'm out riding anyway, so that doesn't matter. What it does mean though is that you are really having to like accept the fact that weather does change on different days. It does rain, temperatures change, which doesn't just affect air density, it also affects how fast the tires roll, even on gravel.
Yeah.
So you'll do enough of it, you'll learn how that stuff works. And I know for most of my spots, I know I can go, if it rains, I got to give it like 3 or 4 days. If you give it 2 or 3 days, you'll still see a little bit of wetness on the tire shed when you go out, and you can see it in the results. It's enough to be, I'd say, maybe 1 or 2 watts for whatever. But it does
That's
matter. It's different.
that's significant.
Yeah, so you got to go again.
Yeah.
But over time, I learned when to go, when not to go. I actually went on a bad day yesterday and had to redo it this morning, but it was the opposite thing. It was this scenario of I think it'd be similar to what anyone experienced at Unbound this year. I'm thinking where the course starts out wet, but then it heats up and it gets drier and it gets a lot of traffic and it's super fast.
Yeah.
Okay, that can happen. It's the in
Right.
between period where it's not wet still, but it hasn't gotten regular dry and dusty and kind of skates the bike around again yet, which is where it normalizes right there. But if you get
Yeah.
that in between part where it's really packed down and there's no dust, that's the opposite problem you can have where stuff rolls kind of abnormally fast, and you can tell if you get out riding on a day like that. You're like, oh yeah, it's like you got
Yeah.
tailwind all day.
Absolutely. Well, and it's interesting. It's one of the things that kind of makes me crazy about Strava. It's like it's with Strava, you've got the GPS error, which can be a couple hundred feet, when people
hmm
are looking at segments, but then it's on top of that, like dirt conditions, the weather, things like that. And I don't think people understand like how much it impacts
Well,
it.
right, and I think a lot of people are scared of that stuff when it comes to testing, and people have a lot of concerns about, well, what happens with this or this? What about those variables? And seek to like eliminate them, but that's not a good way of doing it because you need the stuff in your calculations, and you need to know what happens if you're riding between a alloy rim and a carbon rim, or what might happen if you let the chain get super gross before you go out, or you get way down the cassette into those small cogs that are less efficient. There are a lot of variables, but they can become fairly well known quantities. So there's something to be probably someone's probably said this that's uh, more knowledgeable than me, but variables need to be known and measured and calculated to your best ability rather than ignored or lumped into like or just lumped all together to where it's like, oh, there's so many variables, who really knows? That's a,
Yeah.
you know, that's not a
Yeah.
good way to do it either.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure you're not going to, I'm guessing you're not going to like call out specific tire brands and stuff like that, but have you noticed certain trends as you have done more and more testing as far as what tends to be most efficient between tire widths, tire casing, tire tread, tire pressure?
Oh gosh, that's a lot of things at once. Let's maybe break that down a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so as far as, well, you mentioned manufacturers first, right?
Okay.
Uh, as far as trends between manufacturers, I think it's possible that companies have some tires that are better than other tires in their lineup, and
Yeah.
it's possible that. With that said, I'm hesitant to say that all the tires from one company are slower or faster than others, but if there's tires that people can really see that are not in my test results often, it's because nobody's asking for them or nobody's sending them. And that doesn't tell me everything, but it tells me something.
Right.
It's and then there's tires people ask for all the time, and some of those are asked for all the time for a good reason, you know. So
So I have
there's
a good anecdote for that. Is after I
yeah.
listened to your podcast, I listened to or I went and tried to find the Vitoria because I was doing Leadville this year. And so I had to search all over, couldn't find them in Boulder, couldn't find them in Golden, and like finally found some, like spent way too much money, get up to Leadville. And the shop there in Leadville must have ordered all the Vitoria tires because they had
Oh
so
my
many.
gosh, that's
And so the
hilarious.
word must have gotten out.
That's
That's like the
hilarious.
official
Somebody
tire
cashed
of
in on
Leadville now.
that. Somebody cashed in on that. I've always kind of got my guard up for stuff like that here. I have had it happen with the Continental Dub Natals were on my list to get to probably as quick as possible when they came out because they were pretty hyped up, and I knew once I did which ones did I do first? I did the 2.4s first, and they were pretty good. And so after that, I thought, wait, I better go check stock on 2.2s everywhere before I tell everybody about the 2.4s because I knew what would happen. Everyone's going to buy them up, and then I can't test the other size. So there's some future planning on my part there sometimes, which is like make sure I'm not going to box myself in with my own results.
Yeah.
Because that stuff does get rather hard to find. And
Oh, it
I
was
remember the
crazy.
exact period before Leadville because I had people asking me, where do I find this or that? And I was like, I'm bummed for you can't find those tires.
Oh,
But
well, if anybody needs any, I've got a garage full now. I'm in the tire business.
oh yeah, it can turn into that pretty quickly, can it?
So we kind of got sidetracked, and I apologize. So there are differences between manufacturers, which basically you see just based on, and granted, there's some marketing behind that too, or like, but if people have had bad experiences with tires, they're going to be less interested in hearing the results for those. So aside from manufacturers, like what trends have you seen with widths? Like there's some things I've seen on your spreadsheet that jumped out at me, but I'm curious
I think
if
there's
that's proved out in testing.
okay, so tire width volume does have a benefit eventually for every type of tire. It is somewhat hard to predict when going to a larger volume tire would be faster on different surfaces, but I think the key thing there is it's happening probably quicker than most people realize. Okay. And what I mean by that is by the time that you're on a regular gravel road and you're thinking this bike's a little rough feeling, you are past the point of probably wanting to go to a bigger tire for speed at that point. Because one, the smaller one's going to feel faster because the bike's moving around and making noise, and it gives that illusion of
Yeah.
speed there. And yeah, so and then mountain bikes are actually a great example of that right now. So 2.4 mountain bike tires have taken over at the World Cup level for a good reason. And that reason is
Absolutely.
they are, I would say, pretty much definitively faster than 2.2s on pretty much all mountain bike trails. Even if the trail is not super rough, okay, that's something that trips people up here. Is people will think like, I was, for a softer course but not rocky, you'd want a smaller tire to save a little bit of weight. But one thing that factors into rolling resistance of tires off road is how soft the soil is. It's not just how bumpy it is; it's how soft it is.
And a big part of this is also the tire pressure, right? It's like, I think so. First
Mm,
off, it's crazy to me how much it just won't die. Like there's still people, like especially if they've been cycling a long time, that think narrower is faster, and so that needs to go to the
yeah.
way of the dodo bird. But at the same time, it's like I think a wider tire a lot of times is faster at the appropriate pressure. And so if somebody's running it too soft, then yeah, it probably is going to be slower. But if you run it at an appropriate pressure, then it's like what's actually making contact with
I think
the
tire
ground is
pressure.
going to be
I think
less.
yeah, agreed. I think tire pressure is a good example of it's like that expression, like you can have your cake and eat it too. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's what and that's what a lot of people that ride a lot kind of conclude on their own eventually with tire pressure is that the best pressure is is going to give you good rolling speed, good handling. Uh, you're not going to be smacking your rim all the time. So that's a good easy way to zero in on what's the right pressure, like
Yeah.
that, kind of in like a common sense sort of way. And as far as the what happens to the rolling resistance, there is the curve, so to speak, as far as if you change the pressure like down, 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 down with a tire on gravel or mountain bike trails. As you lower the pressure, it will typically get faster, but once it gets to close to optimum rolling speed, you can even mess the pressure up a little bit one way or the other, and the speed stays very, very much the same. Okay.
When you say a little bit, like half a psi, one
No, like
psi.
2 psi. Like you could have a
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So you got a
Okay.
window, a solid window, I would say, of plus or minus 2 psi for a lot of tires. Are going to have about the same rolling speed, even though they feel different. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you what that does, it gives people the chance to optimize their bike for how they want it to handle and comfort without paying this big penalty for rolling resistance. And
Okay.
this, yeah, and this will a lot of times this comes into play if somebody's doing a big day of riding and halfway in they get on a descent and they're thinking this bike is just all over the place. Tires heat up just like everything else during the day, and air pressure will rise in them, and you can end up with a tire that is probably getting past that plus 2 psi out of where you want that thing. So
Right.
that's why so many rides I go on, I'll find myself after 2 hours like I'm gonna let a little pressure out of here and see how it does. And it's usually better.
Well, here in Colorado, I was just talking to an athlete about this the other day where it's like we might start, race morning, we're inflating the tires at 50 or 60 degrees at 5,000 feet. Over the course of the day, it gets up to 80 degrees and you're at 8 or 9 or 10,000 feet. And so it's like as you go up, tire pressure is going up. As temperatures go up, tire pressure is going up. And so it's like, again, trying to find this optimal pressure.
Yeah, it's a
It's,
moving target, and that kind of comes into the fact that no matter how good of a tire gauge you own, you need to know what those tires feel like. One, just by squeezing them,
absolutely.
as
Yeah.
unscientific as squeezing a tire might be, it's a good habit to get well practiced with, and then kind of understanding how your bike is riding on the day. Because if you send too low, you're smacking the rim all the time, and it's really squirmy going into turns. So it's yeah, getting just the right pressure can be a bit of a moving target during the day, but that's okay. It's just something else to kind of get in touch with while riding your bike.
Well, yeah, and I think my point there is that like there is no optimal like you said, it's a big window there.
Yeah,
And so it's like people that are so hyper like getting these like digital gauges and like gauges differ, like conditions differ, all these. It's like, what
Yeah,
does it feel like? What does it feel
yeah.
like?
I
Yeah,
feel kind of bad saying that. At the same time, I'm trying to like build a better tire gauge for myself at the moment. Uh, but it's okay. It's you can have both things. You want accuracy, especially if you're testing things, but you got to have that common sense element of it also. And people do. I would say the tire pressure thing is it's got to be it's got to be like one of the first questions that people ask anytime I post anything about the pressure. And what's always weird to me is people ask about the pressure, but not like how much me and the bike weigh or where I'm riding or this other stuff. And I'm thinking like, I don't want to give the illusion that there's like a magic pressure for a tire because there's definitely
absolutely.
not. And that's why I push back on that question a little bit, is because that's kind of what it's getting at, is for that tire, what pressure should I run with it?
Well, it's yeah, I get that question from athletes all the time: is what pressure? And it's like, well, I don't know. Like, what's the course? What's the conditions? Did it rain recently? What's this? But so there's a lot of calculators out there, and I rely
Mm.
on them. But in my experience, I think they tend to err high. And so I'm curious if you've tried some of those calculators. Like Silka has one, Wolftooth has one. I think Vitoria might have
You
one.
know,
So I'm just curious what your
the
experience is
Silka
with
one is
those.
funny. The Silka one is funny because I think it gets it really low for a lot of mountain bike pressures, so I don't use it for that. It's really good for road tires, though. Yeah, the Silka one it'll spit out 13, 14 psi for some stuff, and it's that was just more of a curiosity to me than something I would actually run in a tire. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've tried different ones. Probably not as much as I'd say a lot of people. I'm not gonna mess with different calculators all the time, seeing what it gives on this day, because honestly, I can usually guess pretty well what to use for my own riding where I'm happy with it. But I'd say my favorite is the Wolftooth Advanced Calculator. That
Yeah, I
one's
like
it's
that one
pretty
too.
simple to use. It gets it pretty close to what I feel like is a good pressure to use on the day. With the caveat that there's always little nuances to tires and how they feel at certain pressures that are kind of surprising. Like one that got me earlier this year was anyone's been riding a long time probably remembers when Maxxis used to produce the Max Light 2.9 that was like 350 grams, like a short track specialty tire, and the sidewalls they're so thin. They're like a road Vittoria Corsa Speed or something. There's nothing to them. So I got that tire, and immediately had it in my head like, oh, I better be careful and not let this one get too low, or I'll pinch it or whatever. And the thing is the sidewalls are super thin, but the tread cap itself is kind of rigid for such a lightweight tire. So it ended up where I used about exactly what would be calculated for it, which I was not
Oh,
expecting at
interesting.
all. And you can have between gravel tires now that are getting nicer and whatnot. They still have a little bit of a puncture guard layer to them, and that can vary between tires and really change one to where you would want to experiment a little bit with the PSI to get it where it feels like it rides nice, or if it's like certain tread patterns can be like that too.
I think that's one of the mistakes I made running the Vitoria at Leadville. Is was running the lower pressure that I typically run, and it's a very supple tire,
Oh,
which I found out after once I
yeah,
pulled it off. I'm like, oh man, that's a pretty thin tire.
pretty
So
thin.
yeah, so I probably pressure too low, ended up getting a puncture right near a tread that I couldn't plug, and it had to change tire. But that definitely matters, right? And generally you want to run, if it's thicker casing or more rigid, then you can run less pressure, whereas supple casing you have to run higher pressure.
Exactly, and that's one for like a kind of flat prevention as you mentioned there, but also the handling. Uh, Tires, you want to be able to corner with tires, and tires need to feel predictable going into turns.
Yeah.
And tires that are soft, they feel pretty sketchy going into turns, especially if you like to corner hard and really put some force into them. If if the tire is having to settle itself into every turn coming in and out of it, that's a bad setup there.
I always think a telltale sign is when I can see the like dust wrinkles on the side of the tire
Yeah,
from it kind of folding over on itself.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
oh, pressure's a bit low.
With maybe an exception there being mountain bike courses that are really wet or slippery, then there probably is some benefit to lowering the pressure some to have some traction, because you're not going to have as many of the high speed cornering situations there. That's potentially a spot to be using some tire inserts too for a little extra insurance. Uh,
Yeah, so I know we're like going all over the place now. So I'm curious,
all right.
have you done any testing with inserts? Does that impact rolling resistance at all? Or is the pressure high enough that it shouldn't impact it?
I think it depends on the insert. Some of the ones that are really huge and I think are like contacting the sidewall, the interior sidewall of the tire, I think those are essentially serving as extra rubber material like an inner tube would be, which does increase rolling resistance. Some of the others that are like more of the Vittoria's rim liners and some others that are pretty small profile inside the tire. From what I've seen, I have seen that tested some by other people, and it does not seem to impact rolling resistance. I've got some here that I've not tested myself yet, just because I'm still trying to figure out how to do it where I would get meaningful results from it. Because I think most people that are seriously into riding off road are going to use an insert when they want to, just because they need to, really. Even if theoretically it was a tiny bit slower, if they need it, they need it.
Right.
But I don't think they're really negatively impacting rolling resistance. No, my question would be more so, when are they maybe making a tire faster
Because
because
of
of the pressure
inertia?
you can run?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So
Got it. Yeah.
for certain, maybe certain muddy conditions where the ground is really soft, you would get some more stability in the tire from an insert and a little bit lower pressure. So that would be a cool thing to look at. I just haven't had a. There's all kinds of stuff I'll think about, and I try not to. I try not to go start testing it unless I feel like I'm really locked in on what do I want to figure out from this, or what are people really asking about
Yeah.
this a lot, because it does take some time to do this, and I've gotten tires before where as soon as I started doing them, I started thinking like, man, I already knew this thing was slow. Why am I wasting time on this?
Uh, that's too funny.
I
So,
know.
so again, like I got a little sidetracked, and I had asked, like, did you notice trends with like tire
Hmm.
width? And so, something like you were kind enough to share your spreadsheet with me before Leadville, and so I was like able to go in there. And one thing that jumped out at me, it seemed that wider seems to be faster on rougher conditions.
Guaranteed. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's a major one. If people look at those Cat 3 rough gravel results, it doesn't matter if it's a 2.1 or 2.2, it doesn't matter how good it is or how fast it is or anything. Eventually, sheer volume is going to win out once it's rough.
So that's and my understanding with the kind of logic behind that is that we want tires to be supple enough that they can roll over irregularities in the road or the trail or whatever. Because if it's too firm, the energy bounces up versus going forward where we want it to go.
That's exactly it. Yeah. You want the
Okay.
tire to be able to conform to the terrain, and that way you're not losing energy by getting bounced around or it sinking on the ground in the other
Yeah,
case. Yeah.
and I want to go back to something you said because I think it bears repeating that a lot of times these narrower tires feel faster because you have to run higher pressure and you're getting a lot more feedback from the road. So you're feeling every little bump, you're like and so it feels faster. It sounds faster, but really it's a lot of times slower.
Yeah, yeah, that's often the case, is that the narrower ones will feel a little bit faster. And that's something that really took me some. I struggled wrapping my head around that for a while, because I don't know, I was a little bit resistant to running a 2.4 on the back of my bike, my mountain bike, for a while, and sometimes it still gets in my head like, oh, maybe I should switch it back. but it's
That's too fun. I forgot about that. Yeah, I used to
it's
run the like
fast. Yeah, it's
2.1 and a 2.3. Yeah.
yeah, it's faster. Like for mountain bike stuff, like you probably do want a wider tire, even if in the parking lot it feels kind of slow starting out.
Yeah.
But to get back to what you said about trends, that's really difficult. There's a lot of things that are no guarantee of a fast tire, including supple sidewalls or tread patterns that look fast or them being lightweight. Uh, it's not. I try to I try to make a point about that as often as possible. Is there is no fast track towards just picking something that looks like it's going to be good and it being good, because it's often not the case.
So that's something I talk about to athletes a lot, is that kind of between manufacturers, they all have similar treads. And so like people look for fast treads and stuff. Has that been your experience as you're testing tires? Like they all seem to have something in the lineup that matches other tires in other manufacturers'
Oh, sure.
lineups.
There's some similarities there. You can see you how do I phrase this? You can see where some design inspiration is
There
occurring
you go.
with new tires
Yeah.
that come out. Uh, and I'll name names there. I don't care. Pirelli's got their new one that just came out, which is kind of checking all the boxes we've talked about. It's the new Scorpion, and it's you got it 40% faster than their previous lab test results, which we also don't know what those were. And the tread looks rather similar to Schwalbe's famously hard to get and fast Thunderbird
Yeah.
tire, pretty low profile. But there's been plenty of others over time that have these short tread blocks on them. So it's in my opinion, it's hard to tell if that's totally intentional design by who engineered the tire, or if it's like, let's just get it kind of close to what other people are doing. And this new Pirelli that I just mentioned there a little bit, it's quite possible that tire is amazing. I don't know. I'd like to try some.
Yeah.
I just don't know yet. That's why that's like that's the big point, is you don't know till you've tested it or ridden it, and it's it is hard to predict what is going to be really fast. And I'm sure some people are going to listen to this and be getting frustrated by now with thinking like, well, gosh, like tell me what to get or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Just tell me the answer.
And okay, so and so for I'll say this, tires within a given maybe mountain bike category that are really fast on a steel drum are often going to be pretty fast off road compared to other ones in their size range. But there's going to be some that don't test well on a drum that are super fast off road. Uh,
Mm.
and if you only looked at the drum numbers or whatever, you would never know the difference. Maxxis, the Aspen ST, is a great example of that, which people dog on that tire all the time and say it's slow. And turns out it is exactly as fast as Continental's Race King, which gets so much hype.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I noticed on your spreadsheet you were missing a couple of the Aspen, and I almost DM'd you one time to ask if you would
Oh,
be, like, I think you didn't have the 2.4 version in it or something like
I
that. So
know.
I've been curious, like,
There's other ones I need there. I need to. I've just been trying to decide what to try to get next in the Maxxis lineup. I've looked at somebody in, where was this? Sweden? Some guy in Sweden sent me a bunch of tests this summer to look through, and he had tested a few different Aspens.
oh, awesome.
So I'd probably, I think what I want to try is it's the regular tread Aspen, but the 170 TPI.
Okay,
Yeah, which you don't see many of that one. Usually, if you see a 170 TPI Max, it's the Aspen ST tread.
right.
But the regular tread one is out there, and I think it's probably got some potential, partly because the volume's huge on those.
And so for people that don't know, TPI is threads per inch, which higher typically means more supple, right?
I Not necessarily. Those Vittorias you mentioned that are so supple. Do you know what TPI they are?
No.
They're a 60.
Holy shit. All
Yeah.
right.
So so is the Schwalbe stuff. It's 67 TPI. So
Oh, that's crazy.
yeah, the TPI count is not a fast track towards either speed or how supple the tire is. And there's usually if somebody mentions a supple tire, it's kind of shorthand for thin sidewalls. But I got a whole pile of tires at the bike shop, and they would I would say almost all of them would be regarded as supple tires by people, but a lot of them don't feel that supple to me. Uh, some of them some of them have kind of a nicer feel to them. Like some of the really good tires, you can take them out of the package and just think like, whoa, this thing's super nice. Uh, and others I'll take out and I've thought like that's a thin sidewall and it feels like a trash bag or something or plastic. It's
Right.
like this thing's gonna
Oh,
be terrible.
there's a tire specifically that like I have in mind. I'm not going to say it, but it's like a manufacturer where it's like every time I touch one, like it just feels like hard plastic. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, and some of
And
them
so
look really cool too that are like that.
and so something we haven't talked about is rubber compounds. How much does that play into this? Because I know like the specialized
Mm,
stuff, some of theirs or like some of their tires are great, like they feel great, stuff
mm.
like that, but they seem to wear really fast. And I think Continental is kind of in the similar vein with some of their compounds
Okay,
too.
compound is pretty important. I can say that from testing the Continental Race Kings and like the black chili, which I think there's
Mhm.
a few different black chili versions actually floating around out there on those tires. And then also the pure grip. And you can tell one from riding them because the grip ones they kick up rocks everywhere. It's ridiculous. Probably a little bit better on wet routes and stuff, but the difference in the rolling resistance is it's way slower with those pure grip ones. Now with other ones, with other compounds like for Max, it's going between like maybe the Max Speed and then the Max Terra. That's an unknown to me. Okay, so far I've usually tried to seek out what are to test. I'll try to go and pick what I think is going to be fastest. You know,
Okay.
so for Schwalbe's, it would be like the Attic Speed stuff, which is the red stripe on the tread, and there's also Schwalbe does the Speed Grip, I believe, which is the blue stripe on the tread, and those are, I would say, roll a little bit slower, but not like on their downhill tires or anything. It would that's a tough one to answer because oftentimes the casing construction will change a little bit along with the compound.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd also be a little bit thicker casing potentially. I think probably the key there is to what we talked about earlier, is just kind of come back to the tire needs to work for what you're doing with it. And if you're sliding out of every turn, you're not going fast.
Right.
Uh,
That's a telltale sign. Yeah. If
yeah,
you're
and
going sideways.
so the compound is important, and tires now are getting, especially cross country race tires, are getting to where they've got pretty decent grip and they're pretty fast.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so that you kind of want both things there. That's what I'm after for tires that I ride. Is I want them to have pretty good efficiency and pretty solid, at least reasonable grip or predictable grip for what I'm using with them. So the compound is something that I would s- I'd say I'm pretty aware of it if I'm picking out my own tires to go ride somewhere.
Yeah. And so what do you kind of gravitate towards? Are you looking for more grip or a little bit like you said, those ones are kicking up rocks everywhere and they're rolling slower, but you've got the wet roots. So is that something?
Depends on what you're doing with it. I went to last time I was in Bentonville, it was a few years ago, and it's pretty rough riding up there, and it also rained the whole time we were up there. So I rode I got lucky on that. I had a Maxxis Minion DHF on the front of my bike, like a 235, and then a cross mark on the rear. So a little sketchier, but having that extra grip on the front, being out of town and with it wet rocks, and that thing did not let me down at all. But if I was like if I had raced, if I'd raced like Little Sugar yesterday up there, I probably would have had the casing more on my mind than the compound. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be ripping up sidewalls or tread there. So I would have been more concerned with probably trying to, like for those Victorias. I don't know if I would have ran the newer XC race stuff. I might have tried the old trail versions that are still out there.
Yeah.
So that would be, usually for me, if I'm picking tires, I'm gonna, in a lot of areas I would probably run something with a little bit less tread. Uh, than would be chosen other times, just because, like we talked about, I don't like changing my tires all the time. I want to know what it does. Even if it's not perfect, I want to know it. So I'm okay with that. And I grew up riding 26-inch bikes and hardtails, and it was like, current tires in comparison to those are just so far beyond them that
Yeah.
it's almost like the better volume and the better compounds and casing just give you so much benefit. You don't always need a ton of tread. And there's points where having too much tread on a tire is bad.
That's right. Yeah. That's
Like
something I've talked about before with
like I
athletes too, is like
tested
the
those
tread.
I tested those Vittoria Barzos recently, and they're super fast for a big knob tire. And I had a few people ask me questions that I could tell was drifting towards, well, what's the purpose of the peyote or the mezcal then in that lineup? And what's on my mind there is it needs to match up to your riding conditions. You know,
Yeah.
if you got if it's all hard packed turns and some rocks, you don't want a bunch of knobs flexing every time you go into the turns. And that's kind of one of the dimensions of a tire that's a lot harder to measure, is that sort of loss, is the kind of the handling losses. But that's also a little bit of just getting to learn tires as you use them more, and
Yeah.
kind of knowing the rider too. If I've got people I coach who are kind of newer to mountain biking and uh, taking some skills lessons, and they'll have some occasional kind of hard crashes, coming into turns, and that in that scenario, you want some more insurance up front on that tire.
Yeah.
Okay, so you might want something bigger, a little bit softer compound, maybe, just to buy you a little bit of a safety net, I think there.
Right. So what has been the biggest thing that surprised you? And like, how many tires do you think you've tested at this point? And what has been the biggest surprise since you started?
Oh gosh, I've tested like over 30 now, over 30 tires. Uh, Biggest surprise. I don't know. The thing I usually say there is it's hard to tell how something's going to perform uh, from the start with it. And I think one thing that surprised me is how important it is that a tire is well designed, and that might sound kind of vague, you know, but it's tires that are really good everywhere are designed very cohesively by whoever did them, and that's not a that'd be a hard thing for me to prove or whatever, but it's true. It's just there's it's like some tires I've done or I've looked at have just been so good that if somebody would ask me next, well, what made it so good? I couldn't pick anything, because it's the
Yeah.
whole thing and the way it goes together is what makes it so good in that particular size and kind of compound and all that. So it's I think it's easy to make a pretty good tire, but it's hard to make a really really good one.
Yeah.
Um, and you can see that with anyone that rides on the road, like how dominant like Continentals like GP 5000 has been over the last few years. Is like that's because it's good at everything,
Yeah.
and it's not because it's a 180 TPI or it's a whatever black chili. It's like the whole thing is just like really well done uh, by Continental for that. And there's other
Yeah.
ones that are similar, but that part has been interesting because when I started doing this, there's always the interest in splitting these pieces apart and seeing which piece makes the bigger difference here or there and how much. And it's there's no I think a lot of times there's no cut and dry, really well defined answers to this stuff, and that's fine, you know.
What would be your advice to somebody that's trying to pick a tire for, let's say they're racing in the same area, so they're not traveling to a bunch of different races. So let's say they're doing 5 mountain bike races all in the Colorado kind of Front Range area. What would be your advice in selecting a tire to last them that season?
I would say pay attention to what other people are using and talk to them about it. That includes both amateur riders and also professionals. If you're looking at, I'd say pay attention to, what are people riding in the pro field at races you see, and what are they riding successfully to the finish line, and not destroying at
Yeah.
the races. And that's not to say just copy what pros do, but if they're continually, participating at races at that level, they're probably making a lot of good choices along the
Yeah.
way. You know, maybe not perfect, and you don't do everything that they do, but there's probably something to learn there. Same for talking to local people about this or that tire. They'd probably be able to tell you uh, these things flat all the time here, or no, like it just try it. It'll be probably pretty good. And some people love talking about their bikes, and anyone that's ridden one tire has enough experience to tell you their opinion on it. So there's probably an element of kind of being careful who you ask everything to, because you'll get a
Yeah.
reply. But somebody's been riding there a while, and they've tried different stuff, and they at least know what works. Generally speaking, that's a decent enough starting point. You know.
Yeah, and on that note, I feel like bike shops in the area can be a good resource too, because they're typically going to carry the tires that most people are buying.
Yeah, for sure. That's great advice. People that work in a shop, and because they also, they'll hear everyone else's stories that come in there. So you've
Right.
potentially got a lot of like very concentrated advice right there. I think that's good. That's a good
Yeah.
thing.
And then how about if somebody wanted to conduct their own test? I don't imagine people are going to do it to the same extent you are, but if you just wanted to do a quick and dirty test to figure out which tire is quote unquote faster?
I think, at least assuming like a kind of same size of tire, I think there's a lot of benefit to be had from like pavement testing, even for off-road tires.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
More so than, this is going to sound weird to some people, but much more so with pavement than like roller drum testing.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't mentioned much about it, but I'm going to more soon. I test everything. I do off road also on smooth pavement here, and that's a great starting point. And you can tell some things there. So somebody can, if you got a power meter on a bike and a speed sensor, you can find a quiet area to ride some loops on different setups, or like some out and backs and like a half pipe sort of thing, and you know get it loaded into Golden Cheetah and look over it. I think you could probably make some headway doing that without the complexities of maybe what I'm doing with being off road, because I'd say it's harder to do it well. It's got its benefits, but it is harder, and somebody just getting started with it could probably get in a lot of frustrating test scenarios with it.
Yeah. I could see that for sure.
Yeah.
So where can people find you?
A lot of the stuff's on Instagram. Flex Fit by John. It's a lot of bike fitting stuff, a lot of tire stuff. That's been a good way to do it. I'll put stuff up in stories here and there, and then main posts for tire results, and that's probably the best way. I've got a Patreon page that I started too. It's cheap. It's like $5 a month or something like that. But that's been good for people that want. I don't say everything I think in those Instagram posts. Okay. for for a lot of reasons. But somebody really wanted to hear like more of kind of my thoughts on this stuff. Like Patreon's pretty good option. That's a good way for me to kind of prioritize like a lot of the questions people have. And there's what else? I've got a blog on my main website, johnkarrasch.com. I've got what was meant to be kind of the central tire blog with everything in there, and that's got some extra resources and things like that. So that's a good one to look at too. If I put something in there on that blog, it's pretty important. So it's
Awesome.
somebody's really into it. They got a lot of stuff they can read through there. But yeah, Instagram's the probably the main one. That's been fun.
Perfect. And I'll put links to those in the show notes as well. And my final question for you is, what tires do you have on your gravel bike and your mountain bike at the moment?
What tires are on there, or what do I want to be on there?
Yeah, exactly. I just realized I need to qualify that.
Yeah, so
if you're riding for fun or performance, what
I'm
tires
actually
would
about
you
to
use?
change both of them, so this will be fine. Gravel bike, I've got Karrasch 2.2s on there just to test them. They're fine so far. That's all I got to say about them. But on my regular wheels, I've got Schwalbe Thunderbird 2.25s on there. Those are my dailies for the gravel bike. On my mountain bike, I've got Schwalbe Rick XC Pro Speed 2.4s. I'm gonna change those back to my peyotes. I think, although we're about to get leaves falling down here, so I'm probably gonna. I think I'm gonna end up on a Barzo 2.4 front and a Mezcal 2.4 rear for most of like the fall and winter type riding. Get some more usable tread for the leaves and whatnot when they're down.
Yeah. And just to highlight that, I mean, that's a pretty common thing that I don't know that a lot of people do, but like running a faster rolling tire in the back with a little bit more grip in the front. And so that's kind of logic behind that, right? It's like the front for turning.
Yeah, they have much different kind of characteristics to them. And for me, it's like if I'm gonna push a bike hard in a turn, I'm okay with that rear drifting a little bit.
Right.
Definitely before the front would go. And that becomes more so the case if trails get unpredictable. Like here, we have tons of leaves down in the fall and winter time, and it's hard to see where you're going. So yeah, a little bit bigger tire in the front is a nice setup. I had a Recon 2.6 on the front of my single speed with a rigid fork, and that was a really good front tire setup too.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Thank you very much for your time. This is like so much good information, and I hope to send a lot of people to your page and to your Patreon. And
yeah,
I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dave. That was really fun.
Awesome, man. Take care.
All right, talk soon. Bye.